Let me tell you, I never thought the weirdest morning of my life would start with the sound of high heels at sunrise and end with federal agents combing through my dead grandpa's barn. But if there's one thing you should know about small towns, it's that the truth always finds a way to dig itself out, even when folks have spent 30 years shoveling dirt on top. So picture this. I'm 29, bleary-eyed at the kitchen table, staring into a mug of cold coffee, still not quite believing that I, Rowan McCrae, am now the owner of 150 acres of Texas ranch land. Grandpa Harlan left me everything: the fields, the old two-story house, and most importantly, a barn. So ancient people joked it had a birthday older than the Declaration of Independence. Except the only thing older than that barn's secrets was the woman currently marching up my driveway, Margaret Belfont, president of the Millbrook Valley HOA, self-appointed czarina of everything from mailbox color to the length of your front lawn. Now, Margaret's always had this way of making your skin crawl. She doesn't even have to say a word. She just kind of radiates rules. But this morning, something was different. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Foundation couldn't hide the dark circles her hands shook as she clutched a folder to her chest, and she kept glancing back at the barn like it might reach out and grab her. She didn't even bother with pleasantries, just cut right to it. We have reason to believe that barn is hiding dangerous evidence. Her voice, sharp as barbed wire, carried all the authority of a Supreme Court ruling and all the warmth of a tax audit. Now, I hadn't been on the ranch long enough to know every creek and fence post, but I knew this grandpa spent his life protecting that barn like it was Fort Knox. As a kid, I was always steered away. "Nothing in there but old farming equipment, son," he'd say with a wink. Funny, right? Because turns out that old equipment was a lot more than rusty plows. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I could even ask what she was talking about, my phone rang. It was Sheriff Jake Morrison, local lawman, and a guy whose voice always sounded like he'd rather be fishing. "Morning, Rowan. Got a situation here, first time in 20 years. HOA president wants us to inspect your barn for suspicious activities tomorrow." He actually sounded embarrassed, like he was reading the plot of a bad TV show, which honestly is what it felt like. But here's where it got weird. Margaret started hinting, not so subtly that I should have a lawyer present, that sometimes the past has a way of surfacing when we least expect it. She gave me this look right through me, and for a second I saw real fear underneath all that fake concern for the community. I thought, what in the hell does she think Grandpa was hiding? And why was she so scared of what we might find? Couldn't sleep that night, so I did what any paranoid millennial would do. Pulled up the security camera footage Grandpa had installed. I'll never forget what I saw Margaret, after midnight, sneaking onto the property, creeping around the barn, sometimes fiddling with the lock, sometimes planting small objects by the foundation. It was like watching a raccoon in designer shoes try to break into a vault. So morning comes and the sheriff shows up with a deputy in tow. Margaret's already pacing like a caged animal. Sheriff Morrison gives me this look that says, "You seeing what I'm seeing?" The whole walk to the barn, Margaret leads the way, stepping around hazards like she knows every inch by heart, not the actions of someone concerned about trespassing. When she starts explaining which door's usually locked and which key to use, the deputy just about bursts out laughing. Sheriff clips the padlock, swings open those big barn doors, and for a second, all you smell is a century of dust oil and something else sharp and chemical. There's the usual old tools, broken equipment, ropes, the works. But then the deputy's flashlight sweeps across the back corner and hits pay dirt, a cluster of modern surveillance gear, monitors, recorders, and cabinets that looked way too new for a place built when Teddy Roosevelt was in office. Margaret turns chalk white. "Probably just farm monitoring stuff," she squeaks, voice climbing higher by the word. Sheriff just grunts, starts poking around, follows fresh power lines to a wall, finds a safe tucked behind some boxes. Then the kicker deputy finds a trapdoor half hidden under loose floorboards. Margaret starts to lose it. "Sheriff, we should stop this. Could be dangerous." He ignores her, pops the hatch, and reveals a room straight out of a spy movie, 10 by 12 feet, lined with file cabinets, photos, evidence boards, and get this, wall-to-wall documentation of Margaret, different years, different scams, every possible angle. The next few minutes were a blur. Morrison flipping through Grandpa's leather-bound journal, reading entries that made the hair stand up on my neck. Turns out Grandpa wasn't just a rancher, he'd been a private investigator hell-bent on proving that Margaret had killed his son, my father, and made it look like a drunk driving accident, all to cover up a massive insurance fraud ring. 30 years he hunted her, gathering dirt, setting traps, documenting every shady deal and bribe. Now Margaret tries to play it off, but her hands are shaking so bad she drops her phone. The deputy finds a digital recorder, still blinking, still running, and hits play. Margaret's voice 20 minutes earlier talking to herself. If they find the David McRae files, if they realize what I did to get him out of the way. Her own confession, plain as day. At this point, Sheriff Morrison's radio crackles to life. Dispatch, be advised, multiple incidents. Belfont's house is being raided. The HOA treasurer just tried to flee the county and someone torched the community center. Margaret sinks to her knees. She knows it's over. Here comes the twist. Nobody saw coming. FBI choppers descend. Agents fan out, and a woman in a windbreaker steps up to introduce herself as Agent Sarah Chen. Rowan, your grandfather, was our best informant. He built the case that brought down half the county. She lays out the whole story, Grandpa pretending to be a senile old-timer, all the while recording every dirty deal, every coded phone call. Margaret's criminal network wasn't just local, it stretched into state insurance offices, construction firms, even a couple of politicians. 14 million stolen, God knows how many lives ruined. Then Agent Chen hands me a sealed letter from Grandpa for Rowan to be opened upon network takedown. I read it right there, hands shaking. Turns out everything Grandpa did all the years playing the long game was for my dad, and for every other family Margaret destroyed. Son, some justice takes a lifetime, he wrote. But the fight's worth it. I'm not going to lie, when they hauled Margaret away blubbering, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. But what really hit me the gut punch, was learning that my father hadn't just been an unlucky casualty. He was a whistleblower building a lawsuit for families Margaret had fleeced. And that's why she had to get rid of him. Fast forward, Margaret gets life without parole. Her cronies go down. And our HOA actually becomes a real community board instead of a crime syndicate. The barn, once ground zero for decades of secrets, is now the Harlan McRae Center for Victims' Rights. Irony's thick, huh? Margaret, Queen of Control, locked away in protective custody because the same scams that made her rich put her on every convict's hit list. Last twist, and I swear I couldn't make this up. I find another letter with account numbers for offshore funds Margaret stashed away. $4 million quietly returned to the families she ruined. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. So you want to talk about karma, about justice, about what happens when ordinary people refuse to let go of the fight. Let me tell you, sometimes it takes a lifetime, sometimes it costs everything. But when the truth finally comes out, it's loud enough to shake the walls of the past. Now, I've got a question for you. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Ever run into someone like Margaret? Drop your thoughts below. Argue justice, revenge, whatever. Because trust me, in towns like Millbrook Valley, the only thing older than the secrets is the stubbornness to dig them up.